Welcome to this week's edition of the Intersection Podcast. I'm Brennan Casarin. Today I'm joined by the Executive Director of the Greater Columbus Sports Commission, Linda Logan. Linda, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for inviting me today.
Yeah, no problem. And I want to talk about the impact of coronavirus on sports in the Columbus area in general. But before we get started there, can you just kind of give the audience an idea of, what the commission is all about?
Sure. Think of sports tourism, the Greater Columbus Sports Commission. We're going into our 19th year, and we are really charged with bringing sporting events to Columbus. And with that, really, I guess you'd say we have three missions. Is that economic development piece of bringing events to the city that bring visitors that spend all their money here in Columbus, and for that economic vitality. We're also charged with raising the profile of Columbus. And then the third piece is the quality of life of doing great things for Columbus through sports. So those three pillars is really what makes us do what we do.
And just going back to, you're just kind of looking back on this year and everything happened so fast. How did that impact scheduling right away? A lot of postponements, cancellations. How has that impacted things for you guys so far?
Yes. So, we're not alone in that, not just Columbus, but, all around the world, everybody's faced with having to pivot during these very interesting times. So if you may recall that our governor was the first to really close down events, sporting events, in particular the Arnold Schwarzenegger event in early March, where they were just required to have participants and no spectators. And then a week later, we were faced with having to shut down some of our high school championships. We were to host an NCAA Division III championship that was also postponed. And I remember calling the NCAA to say that they couldn't have spectators. There was like a 10-day window where things were very changeable. And they're saying, what do you mean you can't have spectators? And so we were the first, state to make a mandate. And then, within 48, 72 hours, the men's Final Four, the NCAA tournament, the women's Final Four, all of those started to get postponed or canceled. So, kudos to our governor for having the foresight to look farther down the road than most of us knew to do. And then we were one of the first to have a comeback in a sense. The TBT, the basketball tournament, it's the winner take all made for television championship that's about in its 8th year, I believe. We ended up being the bubble host for that event that premiered on July 4th, just ahead of the NBA. And it was, very successful. They used an amazing plan from Johns Hopkins that really worked like a charm, and that we were able to pull off that programming over 11 days. So first out, first back in, but it's been very slow coming back. I will say that just in Columbus and the work that the Sports Commission touches, there's been over 50 events that were canceled or postponed this year, with a very large, number of, economic impact dollars that have been, millions of dollars have been lost, jobs have been lost. And, I think it's going to be a slow comeback for large gatherings, not only just Ohio, but around the world.
Right, no question about it. And when sports just kind of went to a halt, basically, back in March, was there any kind of event on the forefront of your mind that was like, we need to try and, how are we going to put this together? Or was it just kind of, we got to go with the day's news, every day is different, and just kind of adjust on a daily basis?
I'm really proud of our team. We had to do a lot of hand holding. And again, I think we're not out of the woods yet. I think that we still have to maintain that confidentiality with our customers, that we're not going to rush back into this. And certainly our state officials and city officials won't allow that either. So, I think when we sat here 6 months ago, I think we thought by now football, probably Ohio State football was the benchmark, that if we could get to September and things look like they're going to get back to some normal, then I think we'll, be able to persevere. So I think that news probably hit hard when we thought we weren't going to have any college football here, for a number of reasons. I talk about that quality of life piece of just, I think people need something to look forward to. And certainly in Columbus, Ohio State football does that for many of us.
Yeah, no question. And you talked about the basketball tournament a little bit and successfully putting together that bubble. Has there been anything since then, that any kind of events where you've hosted in person or online or anything like that? And how are you guys operating outside of that as well?
Right. So, again, we probably on a normal year, we'll touch probably 70 events a year. And then we have varying roles. I would say a majority of those, we have just a supporting role where we might do a little bit of marketing, we do some event servicing, but primarily the high school association, they run their own events. The Big Ten tournament, they run their own events. The Memorial tournament that's been coming here for many, many decades, they run their own events and we have a supporting role. So we've seen two very successful PGA tournaments that have come to the city on national television, that there's been able to, we're able to demonstrate to the country that Columbus is open for business, if you will, but we still, that our restrictions prevail, especially indoor events. I think that the summer we've been able to have some softball, baseball out at some of our great recreation and parks department facilities. So, the team's been, involved, engaged, but not nearly the volume that we've had in the past. One of our main core goals is booking new events for the community. And we're still in the midst of that right now. We have a final presentation to the NCAA on Wednesday as we're bidding on the Women's Final Four for 2025 or 2026. We're one of four cities vying for 2 years. Tampa, Phoenix, Columbus, and Portland are still in the running there. And we've, had a lot to do behind the scenes. It's all virtual. They did a virtual site visit with us on August 31st, where we had to show them our city, right? Now,
Yep.
some of them have been here, but some of them have not. So all of us had to, roll out our best foot forward for that. And then our final presentation, you have to get very creative when you can't be there in person with your cell. So things like that are still business, not as usual, but we're still forging ahead with trying to book business 4 or 5 years in advance. And that's very important to our holders. And when I say stakeholders, think of when you travel and all the visitor touch points, whether it's hotels, restaurants, the transportation you take, attractions, shopping, all the things that you like to do when you're traveling. And really it's upon us to make sure that those sectors are healthy, and they're not right now. Our, the hotels have had to furlough or lay off many. Some are still, our convention center is open, but they've had to lay off a majority of their staff just because there's not business right now. Some of our attractions like COSI are still closed because of the time. So we're certainly a great destination that wants to come out of this on top, but we've had to learn how to pivot. We've had to learn how to pause in some cases. We've had to learn how to downsize in the others. So again, it's work in progress.
Yeah, no question. And you mentioned bringing in some events that haven't been in Columbus and then some that have, but obviously having to make some adjustments with all the guidelines and everything that you have to follow. Did you guys happen to have any hand in potentially bringing the NHL to Columbus when they had discussed that?
Yes, we did work very much behind the scenes. At first, it was a top secret project, and we were, one of several cities being asked to bid. And it wasn't a traditional bid. It was not, all the bells and whistles you would imagine, but it was, the safety first, and how could we keep the players and all the front, and all the people, all the personnel safe in a very short bubble, if you will. So, we worked, we knew it was not a tough sell, but we knew that originally they thought about bringing 8 teams here, and they were going to do maybe 3 or 4 sites. But when they moved to just 2 sites to 12, we would have not been able to house them all in one place. So it was going to be a harder sell for us. And, eventually they decided not even to come to the US because our cases were so high. But it sounds like they've been doing a great job in Canada. I've got some friends that work for the NHL that have been in the bubble a long time. But it was rewarding work. Even if we didn't get it, we got to know our health directors with not only the state, but the city and the county, because we were going to have to use facilities all over, whether it was the chillers in Westerville or Worthington area or, Nationwide Arena. So we got to touch all the different municipalities and learn a lot, right?
Yeah, no question. And speaking of learning a lot, actually, with the basketball tournament, really the first kind of live sports event that I can recall being back at that time when it came out, has anybody reached out to you guys asking about, how did you go about this? How did you put this together to kind of get feedback for some of those professional sports and other sports that are trying to play right now?
Yes, absolutely. We got some calls early on, and then also John Mugar, that is the founder of the TBT. He's probably got his numbers on speed dial for a lot of people right now. So I know I connected him with a couple of our customers from Colorado Springs that are part of the U.S. Olympic movement, and so yes, I think it was exciting. And I that night when Marquette won, the Marquette alumni team won the TBT, I texted my counterpart in Milwaukee to say, hey, congrats on the win. And she said, hey, congrats on showing us how to do this safely. So you can't buy that kind of testimonial or so, that confidence that people had that once they saw it happen. So there was some nice, there was definitely some nice things that happened because of TBT.
No question. And I know it's still in the middle of the pandemic, obviously, and financially, this will probably have effects for years to come. As you mentioned, it'll be kind of a slow get back to things. Do you have any idea, numbers wise, how it has impacted Columbus financially to this point in the year?
I wish I should have that number memorized. I guess I'm in denial about how much lost business there is, but we're in the hundreds of millions of dollars right now of lost business, at least for calendar year 2020. Still just trying to sort out what one will look like. Plus, maybe you can invite me back in the first quarter and I can give you a good report by then. But so just trying to understand even the rhythm of things. We are set to learn from the NCAA on October 14th. We bid on 40 some events for the years 2022 through 2024. I'm sorry, 2026. And we, expected to land maybe 8 to 10 of those. And now we're wondering, will these that lost events in 2020 and 2021 get pushed to the front of those awarding cities now? And I totally understand that. So, could we drop a little bit of what our expectations are? I mean, we're a site that they really value on not only Division I, but Division II and III schools. But I also think that they're having to put these big puzzle pieces together too. So it's going to be an interesting and totally understandable, right? So it's not like you can complain about it.
Yeah.
But I think we all have to just learn to be flexible. And I guess I'll wait for your next question, but there's been a few other things that we've done to pivot and some of the other programming that we do too, but I'll wait and not monopolize the conversation.
Yeah, and what have been those situations that you've had to pivot in specifically, if you had to name a few that were, really challenging and kind of hard to navigate through in such an unprecedented time?
So again, having such a talented staff, we used to do an event in person called the Morning Sports Report, where it was a breakfast event with 700 people. And so really at the beginning of April, we decided to do a virtual sports report for 7 weeks in a row. We did a virtual Zoom interview, much like you're doing today, where we invited the community to come out and listen. And we interviewed the president of the Crew and somebody from the Blue Jackets and the Clippers and the Memorial Tournament and high school sports and our marathon races. And everybody talked about, how they were going to have to change their business model this year. Certainly it's for 1 year's, hard, but it's not sustainable in the long haul. But we were so pleased, we've got maybe 100 people that would tune in live for those events. But then the outreach became truly incredible. With probably over 1 million impressions, and in some cases, the New York Times and other media sources picked up the work. And so, under normal times, we probably would have never thought to do something like that, where we knew that there would be local interest. And I think we didn't understand how much content we were providing in a time when we didn't even have baseball or NBA or hockey back. So we filled a void. So just really proud of the fact that our marketing team came together with such initiative that we think will continue.
Yeah, and we don't know when coronavirus is going to be gone, but there has to be an anticipation for it, obviously. And how do you think that the things that you guys are bringing in now, the different guidelines, different ways of going about things that you mentioned, changing the business model. Do you think that there will be things that stay the same, after the coronavirus is gone from this, or do you think it's just back to pre-COVID times before,
You know,
we get
yeah,
to
good
post-COVID?
question. I mean, I certainly think as a community, we had great momentum going, whether it was ourselves with just coming off a very successful women's Final Four. Our sister organization, Experience Columbus, had just hosted something called ASAE, which is considered the Super Bowl of convention. Both went so successfully that we were really kind of going sky high in our efforts of getting new groups to come to Columbus. And so I think that we've just had to stay engaged with our customers and stay relevant and providing, all the great things that our community does. We're a very open city. We're a city that really still has so much potential when it comes to bandwidth, right? Whether it's having companies relocate here or events being hosted here, I think the sky's still the limit. It's just that ability to be out there and actively selling in times where people are, a little tentative.
Yeah, no question. And one last question for you. Looking back in March, I like to ask people, how they found out about, basically the world shutting down at that time, because I think it's kind of interesting to reflect on such a just weird time in our lives. How did you find out the news? And I can assume what your initial reaction was, but what was your initial reaction?
Well, I know that with the Arnold Sports Festival, as I mentioned, we were probably a little bit on the inside with the fact that we were on calls about an event that was happening here in Columbus
Mm-hmm.
when our governor really was, taking a bold move, one of the first in the country to do so. So I remember texting my colleague in Cleveland saying, "Hey, have you heard this?" And have you heard? And then a week later, have you heard that we can't have any spectators for whether it was the high school sports or the NCAA? And so it was happening real time where we were getting some texts from, and even some of our colleagues at the State House were learning as we were. So it was just unfolding. You always remember where you were for significant events in the world, right? So I think we're going to remember March of 2020 in that very same way.
Yeah, no question about it. And Linda, I really appreciate you taking the time and joining us today.
All right. Thanks so much. Have a great rest of the week.
Yeah, you too.